Why, hello there. Jacob here. And today, let's go ahead and kind of give my thoughts and opinions on basically the John Hynes era as of December 8th. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So, yeah, John Hynes was signed by the Minnesota Wild after letting go of Dean Evason on November 27th after the Wild got off to, I believe, like a 5-10-4 start. And it was... Whoa. Again, I don't think I need to tell you how bad that actually was. Especially if you watched more than about 5 minutes of a game. I mean, it was just... special teams didn't exist. We pretty much gave up a goal every time we went on the penalty kill. And the penalty kill was basically on the ice for most of a period, it seemed like. We had like a period's worth of penalties a night. Which, again, was one of my big gripes of staying out of the box. But for whatever reason, the Wild can never seem to stay out of the box if their life freaking depended on it. But, yet again, here we are. And then, finally it just got to a point where it was so stale, so stagnant, that Billy Guerin decided to pull the plug on Dean Evason and hire John Hynes, which, again, was another move that a lot of people were kind of questioning. Especially because, last we knew, he just missed the playoffs with Nashville. He was part of a New Jersey team that was not great, we'll just put it that way. But again, it is what it is, It's the NHL is probably the one sport that recycles coaches the most out of, any sport. It seems like whenever coaches get fired, they're always on a new team within a season to a season and a half. So I would not be surprised if Dean Evason gets another chance somewhere else, or at the very least becomes an assistant again. Because, he definitely has the talent. He definitely has, something there. Because, again, he helped guide some Wild teams that really weren't supposed to do anything into doing something. Granted, for the most part, it was pretty much the same, song and dance it's been since, 2015, 2016, but, again, here we are, And even going into this year, too, with, Billy Guerin and this and that and the other thing, there were still a lot of moves that had me confused. Case in point, the re-signings. But... like I say, we are where we are now. I know the cap hits and this and that. The other thing are still going on for a couple of years. Even though it sounds like the cap is going to go above $87 million next year, which is like a $3 or $4 million increase from this past year. So that should help a little bit with the Parise and Suter buyouts. And then, of course, with Dean Evason getting fired and this and that and the other thing, too. So that should help, even though I don't think coaches' salaries count towards the actual salary cap for the team, though. Then again, I could be wrong there, too. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, kind of coming back to now the actual John Hynes era, he comes in and immediately the team just turns around. The penalty kill is actually killing penalties. The power play is starting to get a few goals behind the net. The lines actually look like what the lines should look like. Case in point, the top line is, at least more often than not, I know he has kind of switched around the lines a little bit just to try to get something going, which I do appreciate with Hynes, getting guys together that are used to being together, especially if they're a high-profile line or, a high-scoring line when they needed it the most. And, the top line is Kaprizov, Rossi, and Zuccarello, which most Wild fans were basically clamoring should have been the top line since basically Game 2 or Game 3. Basically, after Marco Rossi decided to, turn into the Marco Rossi, we thought he would. And then the second line of Joel Eriksson Ek, Marcus Johansson, which, I don't know. This is the second time this has happened with Mojo. Ever since, the first time we brought him in, he just looked like a shell. He couldn't do anything. And then he goes back to Washington. The Wild trade for him going into the playoffs. He goes on a hot streak. It's a 2-year deal. And he's now goalless in, the last 10 games. So it's you weigh the good and the bad. However, though, Boldy is finally getting back on track after John Hynes took over. I know Boldy had that shoulder injury, upper body injury, like within the first 5 games of the season, so he missed a few games and all that stuff. But so yeah, that second line is finally starting to turn things around. The third line of Maroon, Gaudreau being back, and Foligno. I mean, that is our grit line. That is our sandpaper line. That is the line that goes out there to take care of things if things need to be taken care of. And, oh yeah, Marcus Foligno had arguably one of the best goals I've seen him have in a long time the other night against Calgary. And, yeah, I mean, like I say, even Foligno's looking better this year. Granted, like I say, he was injured pretty much all of last year, so I can't necessarily, blame Foligno for being bad just because, this, that, and the other thing, but he definitely looks a lot better this year, which, again, is greatly appreciated, especially after that contract extension, which I still don't know if I would have done until the end of the season, but again, I'm not the general manager. And then that bottom line. Finally, Hartman is where he should be. And more of that bottom, scrap line where, that's where he's at his best, in my opinion, is when he can be, like a scrappy, sort of solid veteran who can boost up a bottom line pairing with a little bit of scoring depth and stuff like that. In between Dewar and Duhaime, who are, again, they're very solid bottom pairing that aren't afraid to get into it and mix it up too, but can also zoom by you and, I mean, hell, it seems like every shorthanded goal opportunity involves either Dewar or Duhaime in at least one facet or the other. And then you can even sprinkle in a little bit of Joel Eriksson-Ek in there too. But, yeah, I mean, like I say, the lines are looking good. The lines are about where I feel like they should be, and I think where a lot of Wild fans would agree with me on that one. However, though, the defensive pairings are still a work in progress. Faber and Brodin is fine. Spurgeon and Middleton is fine. But why is the bottom line pairing still Goligoski and Merrill? I thought we found out that experiment doesn't fucking work. Why not call up Mermis? Why not call up, Leterre? Why not call up those guys? Why not call up a defenseman from Iowa? Because Mermis looked pretty good. I mean, honestly, I would not be mad if we had a Mermis and Goligoski line or whatnot. It's just, I don't know. Merrill took another dumb penalty last night, and that basically was the kibosh of the game last night because, well, for those of you who, weren't paying attention or anything like that, the Vancouver Canucks snapped, I believe, a 5-game winning streak against the Minnesota Wild. Or it was either a 4 or 5 game winning streak. It would have been 5 something. Anyway, they broke the John Hynes winning streak. And now tonight, as of, again, Friday, December 8th, when I'm recording this, we take on Edmonton, which, oh boy, I mean, that's always an interesting matchup just because, well, last time we played Edmonton, we absolutely mopped the floor with them. But again, this is now an Edmonton team that's sort of found a little bit of momentum and mojo. And again, it's still Draisaitl. It's still McDavid. Evan Bouchard's looking pretty good. I mean, Zach Hyman is looking solid. Desharnais is starting to get going. Ekholm, they got some pieces that are really starting to develop and find themselves. And I think the goaltending may finally be catching up. But, yeah, I mean, now we get to see what John Hynes is made of. Now we get to see what John Hynes can do coming off of any sort of adversity for really the first time. So we'll know tonight if the Wild come out and get absolutely blown out, then there might be some answers there. But if the Wild come out and win, again, like I say, it's still a long season. This is a back-to-back going from Vancouver to Edmonton, which made no sense considering the road trip started in Calgary and Edmonton hosted, I believe. Yeah, Edmonton absolutely mopped the floor with Carolina on Wednesday night. I don't get how the NHL schedules their stuff, but I think that's pretty much all I got to say there. But anyway, And then we end the road trip on Sunday night, ironically enough, in Seattle. So, before we come back home to take on Calgary, I believe on the 14th of December, something like that. Because we have a couple days off after the road trip. But, yeah, I mean, honestly, the Wild are currently 9-11-4 as of the time I'm recording. And, yeah, I mean, like I say, we're right back to relevancy. Whether or not we turn into a playoff team, whether or not this, is the way things are for the rest of the year, who knows? But, yeah, I mean, I definitely like the direction the Wild are in right now. At the very least, just playing like a full team. Because if we lose, we lose. I mean, if we end up out of the playoffs, we're out of the playoffs. But I'd like us to be competitive. I like to watch a good game on the ice. I actually like to watch a hockey team on the ice and not elephants with skates, which it seemed like we were for the first 10 games of the season, more times than not. But now the Wild are finally settling into a game that suits the Wild, and who knows? Sky's the limit. We're not even to Christmas yet, so going into 2024, who knows? And plus, it's not like the West is necessarily a juggernaut this year either, which is another thing to talk about for a later date. Alrighty, well, I think I've rambled on long enough here, but basically, just again to wrap it up, the John Hynes era so far has been successful. Now, how far this goes, how long this lasts, or will this all come crashing down again? Who knows? I mean, I am a Minnesota sports fan. So, it's... we're kind of gluttons for punishment here, but... Again, I'm very excited. I'm very happy from what I've seen. Let's keep it going, Let's end this road trip with 2 victories. Let's get back above 500, going home, and go from there. So until we meet again, this is Jacob. Have a good one.